All right. Hey, everybody. Let's see, making sure everything is actually working here. Wonderful. All right. Hi, I'm Nathan Smith. I am the digital programming coordinator here at the Central Arkansas Library System. Thank you so much for joining me for Stream It with OBS Studio. I'm excited to let you get familiar with this material and hopefully start doing some fantastic streams. If you start using this regularly, please let me know and I can come check it out. So before we dive into the specifics, though, I do want to tackle a few things, just kind of housekeeping type stuff that I like to get out of the way at the beginning of every class, so we can make sure that it's all said. So first thing, of course, is just if at any point you have a question, please let me know. Don't worry about if it seems like a silly question or a little too easy or anything like that, or if it's a little off topic. None of that stuff bothers me. I'd much rather make sure that your question's addressed so that we can so that you can follow along with what's going on in the class, because my idea of a successful technology class is one where people learn useful things about technology. So if you don't understand what I'm saying or what I'm presenting to you, that's an unsuccessful class. If you are tracking with it, even if maybe we don't get to every single point in my outline, or there are some little interruptions or things like that, all of that's fine. What I don't want is for us to get in a situation where I'm just talking and you're not getting a lot out of the class. So let me know if you have questions and we'll make sure that those get tackled. If you are joining me in Zoom, click the little chat button at the bottom and send your messages in that way. If you're on a mobile device on Zoom, tap the middle of the screen, look for more in the corner, tap on that, then tap chat, and that's where the chat will be. If you're joining me on Facebook, make a comment on the video just like you would any other post on all of Facebook, and I'll see that and be able to respond to it. If you're on YouTube, look to my right if you're on a computer, or down below if you're on a mobile device for the live chat, and you can ask questions there. And if you're joining me on Twitch, then just use the chat like you normally would over there on the right-hand side. Any of those, I'll see it and I'll be able to respond. So, hit me with those questions as they come up and we will make sure they get tackled. One other thing, of course, if there are technical difficulties at any point, please use all of those methods I just described to let me know as soon as possible. It's happened to all of us. We're talking, but we're muted accidentally, or any number of things could potentially happen. So I just want to make sure that that we are using our time well, that you're not just watching me move my mouth and not actually hearing what I'm saying, or hearing me describe something on a screen that you can't see, things like that. All of that is not great. So please let me know if there are problems so we can get those addressed as quickly as possible. All right, I think that's all of the little housekeeping things. Oh, by the way, that's one other thing. If you are not, if you don't already know, if you are here in Zoom or on some other streaming service, CALS has actually launched a Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/CA Library System, which you can check out. We are doing, this class obviously is being streamed there. And we're doing a variety of other stuff, like game streams. I've been playing through Undertale with a colleague on Tuesday afternoons. So if that's at all interesting to you, then come on and join us. We'll be happy to have you. And we're going to be doing some other stuff there pretty soon too. So I'll go ahead and drop that link into all of the places really quick, and that will make it that'll make it easy to get there. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the topic. First things first. Actually, you know what? First things first. It's kind of dark in here. I meant to open the window, so let me open, or the curtains, I should say. So give me just a sec. Yeah, see, muted. Might not look any different to you, but that is a little better for me. So there we go. Okay, great. All right, so what we're going to do, let me just give you a little overview here. We are going to talk about setup and kind of how to get around inside of OBS Studio. We're going to talk about things like scenes and arranging things on the screen and working with audio a little bit. And we're also going to talk, actually before that, we're going to talk a little bit about gear, just so that so you have an idea of what equipment you might need, if any, and that sort of thing. And then we're going to talk about how to go live and just, well, that'll be pretty much it. Once you go live, it's kind of up to you what you want to do. So we are going to keep this fairly platform agnostic. So if you are, this should be applicable pretty much regardless of what live streaming platform you're working on. If you, you know, I'm going to, we won't get into specifics of how to do X, Y, and Z on particular streaming platforms for the most part, just because there are several. And I mean, I'm using 3 of them right now, this very moment. And they're all different, but they have a lot of stuff in common as well. So, you know, we'll get into that, and hopefully y'all will get a lot out of this. Okay, well, there go the dogs. It's been a while since I've done a class from home. Give me just one more moment. All right, that's a little better. Thanks for your patience. So here we go. What I'm going to do is we are going to start with just, well, how to get the program, so that way you know you know what to do. If you have OBS, you can follow along with me, and it should be fairly straightforward too. If you don't, then that's okay. You know, just watch. This is going to be available on the Cal's YouTube channel after the fact. Of course, it's going to be in the VODs on Twitch for the next 14 days. So you'll have plenty of chances to rewatch if you want to kind of follow along later on. So here we go. Let me fire up the screen sharing. The setup on this is a little ridiculous, y'all. But it's cool. All right, let's see. I'm working off 2 different computers, and I've got just the desk is covered in gear, basically. It's not that all this is super duper complicated, but it is kind of, but it's kind of complicated to both do it and show you at the same time. That gets a little tricky. So let's see, here we go. All right, excellent. Let's see. Okay, that's weird. There we go. All right, good. Good. So let's do this. So in order to get a hold of OBS Studio in the first place, of course, you'll want to go to obsproject.com. That's where that lives. And of course, click on whichever of these is the right one, Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. And then once you click on it, it should start downloading the appropriate installer pretty much right away. So once you've got that downloaded and installed, you can open it up, and it's going to have a little setup wizard. We're not going to go through the setup wizard because like OBS is already installed on my computer, and it's pretty straightforward too. It's just going to walk you through. It's just going to walk you through using or setting up OBS for the purpose that you are wanting to use it for. And based on your computer's hardware and things like that. So we're going to skip over all of that, and we're just going to go straight to the main screen of OBS where you'll find yourself when you open the program after the first time, basically. So let's do that. Here we go. Okay. So here we are inside of OBS, and there's a bunch of stuff going on here. Let's talk about it. So right here in the middle, at least in the default layout, is basically just a preview of whatever's going out to your audience. So right now, of course, it's nothing, particularly since I'm not streaming at this point from OBS here. But even if it, but assuming that it was something, then it's going to, whatever I set up here is basically whatever I see here is basically what's going out to my audience. Down here at the bottom, we've got a few different panels that we'll talk about. And the first one that I want to draw your attention to is scenes. So when you're using OBS, sometimes you'll need to switch views, essentially. I'm doing sort of a rudimentary form of this in Zoom right now, which is right now you're seeing my video and you're seeing the screen share at the same time. If I turn off the screen share on that device, or if I turned on screen share on my other computer, then you would see that happening, or then something would change for you as well. The most basic version of this that you see on on kind of your average stream is like there's kind of a beginning part where it's somebody's just on camera talking, and then they're like, okay, let's get into the game, and then they start the screen sharing, and and you can see the game, but you can also see their camera and stuff or whatever. So that's accomplished with scenes or something like it if they're using different software. Each scene has a bunch of different sources. These are going to be your inputs that you're going to use to create your stream. So let's talk about what kinds of things might be inputting to your stream, including some gear that might be useful for you, just depending on your situation. So you don't need much to just dip your toes in. In fact, really, you only need your computer. If you have a laptop then it's going to have a webcam built into it, and that webcam is going to have a microphone built into it. And so really you could get away with doing it, really you could get away with streaming from your, streaming just using that. And if you want to dip your toes in, that's not a bad way to start. The only other piece of hardware that I would say is probably pretty mandatory is going to be some kind of headphones. If you aren't using headphones, here's what's going to happen. When you talk into the microphone on your computer, then audio is going to be coming, audio might be coming back out of your computer. And if that happens enough, it's going to create a little feedback loop. Plus, any sounds that are happening, this is the bigger thing. If you're streaming a game, for example, sounds that are happening inside the game are going to go out through the stream directly, but they're also going to go into your microphone. And that's going to lead to a weird double audio thing that you really, really don't want. So headphones, an absolute must anytime you're streaming. And honestly, even when I'm running programs on Zoom, I always tell the people who are going to be participating in the program, please, 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 please use headphones. So make sure you got some headphones. They don't even have to be good ones, really. I mean, that helps, but at least helps you figure out whether you're sounding good or not. It doesn't make a difference for your audience, really, once you've started the stream. But at the end of the day, it's going to be, the most important thing is keeping that computer audio out of your microphone, keeping those two things separate. So, so that's the most important piece of gear, I would say, other than having a computer to stream from in the first place. In addition to that, you might need some other pieces of equipment. So if you're getting a little more advanced, always a good purchase is an actual good external microphone. So there are a bunch of them out there. There are a lot of ones that sound pretty good. Personally, at work on my desk, I have the Blue Yeti, which is pretty nice. It's just a USB cable you plug in. Most of the time, you're probably going to want a USB mic unless you're doing something pretty specific and complicated. But you should have that for the most part with the excuse me. But yeah, you should sort of be able to you should be able to find something pretty decent pretty easily. This microphone right here, which I just realized is kind of having a problem, so I'm working on that while I'm talking to you. This particular microphone right here is the Samson, Samson, not to be confused with Samsung, Q2U, which is a nice choice, kind of less, a little less sort of, I don't know, a little less kind of like, well, it's less expensive. It's not quite as nice as the Yeti, which I like a little bit better, but it is still a pretty good option. Another thing that you can, that's strange. Okay, there we go. So microphones and a set of a microphone and a set of headphones. Another piece of gear that you might need, just depending on your situation, if you're wanting to stream computer games, obviously you had to make sure that your computer itself is up to scratch, because running a game and running the stream at the same time is going to tax your computer pretty heavily, unless it's a pretty lightweight game, something 2D. And so, so make sure that that's up to the task. You might have to upgrade your computer. if you're doing, if you're wanting to play the latest, something or other at 120 frames a second. So that's something. And then another thing is this right here. Not exactly this device necessarily, although this one is the AverMedia Live Gamer Mini. There are a lot of different devices like this. AverMedia and Elgato are the two ones that make these devices primarily, kind of the big names in the business. And that is a video capture card. This is pretty important. I'll show you how it works a little later on. But if you're going to be running your stream from a separate device from what you'll be playing on or whatever, then you're going to want to have something to capture that video as it comes in and stream, or and get it into OBS to stream out. So I've got my switch here on the desk, and I'll show you a little bit later how to stream from it. But I do have to use that capture card. Technically, you could also stream from either a PlayStation or an Xbox if you have one of the later couple of iterations of those. But it's going to be a little bit lower quality, and you're going to have a little less flexibility and fewer options, essentially, if you do it that way. So I mention that only to say, if you're really getting into this, if things are going well, if you have decided if you've decided this is something that you really want to go for in a very serious way, and it's perfectly fine to just do it casually. But if you've decided that you want to get a little more into it, or you want to try some different types of formats, then having one of those capture cards is a really useful thing. Okay, so that's some hardware. Let's go back and talk about OBS directly. And let's go ahead and set up our first scene here. So for our first scene, one of the obvious things that we're going to want to do is we're going to throw in the camera here. So I'm going to click the plus sign right here down at the bottom. And we're going to go down here and find video capture device. All right, so it says create/select source. And we've got here our, we've got this, it says create new here, or we've got add existing. So we don't have any existing sources just yet. I'm going to go ahead and add a new one. I'm going to say webcam. All right, so I'm just using the integrated webcam on this other computer, which frankly looks kind of bad, but I didn't want to fiddle with setting up two external webcams that just get a little too nuts. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to click OK. And then it's going to pop up and give me this properties dialog box right here. So with a properties dialog box, I've got, actually, I'm taking in video from the capture card right now. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to choose integrated camera, which is the built-in webcam. There we go. Excellent. All right. So now I've got that selected, and you can see my lamp that's out of shot on the other camera. So I've got that set up. I can come down and I can tweak any of the settings that I need to. So resolution/FPS type. So this is going to, if I choose device default, then whatever the default settings for this camera are, it will go with. Now, the default settings are not necessarily, the highest quality settings. So you might you might fiddle around with this. You might also look into what specifically your camera is and what its specs are in order to get this set up the way you want it to be. I personally find the webcam that I'm using up here that's going into Zoom is the Logitech C920S HD. And that one, the default resolution is 720p, but it does 1080p as the, but 1080p is the maximum. And so, so I can actually come down here and change that resolution if I want. With this webcam that's built into the laptop, I have no idea what the normal resolution of it is. So I'm just going to leave it as the default for now. You can also change the frame rate down here and a whole bunch of the video format that it's capturing. If you change the frame rate to a frame rate your camera doesn't support, guess what? It's not going to work. So look into your camera and figure out what the actual specs are, so that way you can get the highest quality without worrying about, or you can get the highest quality that will still actually work for your device. So let's see, we'll come on down here. All of this stuff we can leave as the default pretty much. I'll click OK. And there we have it. Now our video is in the is on the screen here. So from here, if I wanted to have kind of a full screen video in OBS, I could do that. So I can use the little dots in the corners and on the edges to widen it, or I can actually right click and I get a bunch of additional options here, including down here under transform. I could say fit to screen, since it's the same aspect ratio as my layout here, then I'm getting full screen camera there. If your camera is shooting in a different in a different shape, essentially, when I say aspect ratio, what I'm talking about is the ratio of width to height, 16:9. So is kind of the normal standard aspect ratio for a TV, 16:9. So for every 16 pixels that make up the video wide, you have 9 pixels, vertically there. So if your camera is 16:9 and your canvas here, the layout that you have is 16:9, then you're good to go. If they're different, then you might not be able to fill it up all the way. You might have to stretch some things out or crop some things. One thing that, well, we'll talk about the cropping a little bit later. You've got a bunch of other stuff here. You've got, various transformations. You can flip your camera if it's mirrored and you like the way it looks this way, great. Or you've got your, you can rotate things. You can just center it on the screen. And you can even, if you want to get very specific, you can go over transform and click edit transform, and then you'll get this whole list of settings that you can tweak as much as you need to make everything just exactly pixel perfect. And you have a reset button here, so you can set it back to what it was what it is by default. Okay, let's see. So let's go ahead and make it. There we go. All right. So so that's our full screen camera setup there. Well, let me go ahead and add another scene. I'm going to hit the plus sign here, and we could leave it as scene 2, or we can call it something else like, let's say screen share. All right, great. So I've created the scene and it automatically switched to it. So so now I can create my new layout here. First, I'm going to go to the plus, And let's go ahead and throw in our screen sharing. So I'm going to head to window capture. I'll click OK. And we've got our, it's prompting me, which window do I want to capture here? So I'm going to say, so I'm going to come down here and click on Firefox. All right. And I have a few other options here. You can change the capture method. In other words, what is it? What kind of software options is it using to get to capture what's happening inside of your window? And you also have this window match priority here. So if you choose window title must match, then once you close this window or once the title of the window changes, then OBS is going to lose the signal from that window, essentially, which is good. If you need it that way, because if you've got two different windows open, you've got a browser window with your top secret instructions, and then you've got the browser window that you're actually showing the audience. You want them to be able to see the one you're showing the audience. But if you accidentally close that one, you don't want them to switch over to your secret run of show or whatever. And so you can use this to basically say, tell OBS, okay, if you don't have a window that's called exactly this, Firefox exe : Open Broadcaster Software OBS Mozilla Firefox, then look for something that's similar, basically. And that's what it's going to do. I'll click OK. And there we have our screen share on the screen. Great. So now what we need to do is let's go ahead and throw the camera back in. So I'm going to hit the plus sign, video capture device. And this time I can go to add existing and click webcam right there. Now I can choose, by the way, whether or not to make the source visible. So if I want to throw a source in there, but not necessarily have it show up right away, or I need it to start hidden and then I'm going to reveal it at some point during the stream, then I can uncheck that box. And that way I don't have to fiddle with that later on. But I'm going to make it visible. Okay, and it puts it here on top of the other. Just like almost anything that allows you to layer stuff in a computer, this is going to give you some, or whatever you put on last is going to be on top. So I've got my, so I've got this, the camera feed is going to be on top of the other. I can bring it down here. In fact, if I want to stop my video feed from getting in the way quite so much, there's some extra stuff here that I don't necessarily need. And I don't necessarily need my camera to show every pixel from corner to corner. So I'm going to crop it a little bit. You can go into the transform properties like I showed you earlier, but there's actually an easier way to do it. What I'm going to do is hold Alt on my keyboard while dragging the edges here. And that will allow me to crop this down so that I get just the part that I'm in. Now, if you're, if you're someone who moves around a fair bit, then you may not want to crop it quite as tight as this, but this is something that, it just depends on your setup. I mean, obviously, if you're farther away from the camera, then cropping it more will probably be fine. So it just depends on what you need. So for now, we've got that cropped in, and we've got our screen share. And if I switch over to my screen sharing, or switch over to Firefox here, the folks on the stream are going to see what I'm doing. There is a little yellow outline here. Your audience won't see that. You're seeing it because I'm capturing it in a very roundabout way so that I can both show you this, show you how this works, and or demonstrate how it works and stream it out to you at the same time, which is complicated, but normally your audience will not see that. Okay, cool. So let me go ahead and I gotta move this thing. The little floating Zoom control bar drives me nuts sometimes. Okay, so here we are, we're doing our thing in the browser, whatever the case may be, whatever we're demonstrating to our audience. So let's see, depending on how you want to lay things out, you might resize this. Again, because my screen and the what they call the canvas are the same shape, this and actually the same exact size, this is filling it up. But if they're not, then it won't necessarily. All right, I'm going to come down here. If I want, some folks prefer a layout like this where you can see the whole screen. They might have some other stuff going on here, like a little stream of the chat and things like that. We're not going to get too deep into, well, we're not really going to get at all into how to make that aspect of things happen because it's a little more complicated, and it kind of depends on what software you're using and different things like that beyond just OBS. Just plain OBS will not do a lot of those sort of graphical things that particularly folks do a lot on Twitch, things like seeing the seeing the chat and having little alerts when somebody subscribes to the channel or whatever. Those sorts of things you can do, but you kind of have to have additional add-on software. The thing that I've been using recently has been a thing called Stream Elements. Streamlabs has a similar type of thing. They basically have their own version of OBS. OBS Studio is free and open source, which is really cool. And basically it means that anybody can see the code, they can modify it, they can create their own versions of it. And so Streamlabs has done that. They've made their own version of OBS. It looks slightly different and it has some additional features to it. But vanilla OBS is a really good way to start out. And honestly, like, not everybody likes the, seeing the chat in the video as well as, on the side and stuff like that. So, and that can add some extra layer of complication. So it's totally up to you. We're not going to get into that today. We're going to focus on just OBS today. So if I like this layout, I can go with that. It looks a little plain by itself. Maybe I want a little something a little extra here. So what I can do, I'll click the plus sign again. This time I'm going to go to image. And I can either create new or add existing. Again, I don't have anything existing because I cleared out all my scenes before we started the class. And so I'll click OK. And now we have our, and now we can browse for an image. So I'll click browse and I'll head up to the desktop where I put an image. Click open and there it is. Okay. So I'm just going to click OK. And now we've got our image here, but it's very, very large. So let's go ahead and make it smaller. I'm going to, well, okay. So right away, you might notice something weird happening. I've got the image here, but I also, when I mouse over these little areas, you'll see there's the video feed from the camera here. And there's also the screen share up here that are kind of outlined. I want to leave those where they are, but I don't want to, and so I don't want them to get moved accidentally. So what I'm going to do is come up here and I'm going to click on the little lock next to webcam and window capture there. And now when I move my mouse over this, there's no little outline. Excuse me, those are going to stay exactly the way they are. So I won't have to worry while I'm resizing this image and doing all the things. I won't have to worry about accidentally losing my whatchamacallit, the I won't have to worry about moving all my other stuff inadvertently. So let's make it happen. I'm gonna come down here, and probably the quickest way to do this is gonna be go to transform again, and I'll just do fit to screen. There we go. Okay, so that's a little better. What it's given me is this situation where I've got it filling up the screen, but not as much as possible. But since it's a different shape, I'll probably need to do something to tweak it. Easiest way, I could kind of bring this over, and then I'll probably just grab the dot down here and resize it a smidge so that I get it full on there. There are some other options. You could, in transform, you could go center to screen, or, you know, which will just place it in the middle and make sure there are no gaps. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you could do. I'm not too worried about it at this precise moment. There we go. Okay, so I've got my little background image there, but obviously I can't see any of the other stuff. So what I'm going to do is come back over here, and I've got my image. I'm just going to click on it, and then click on these two, or click on this down arrow right here. Click, click. That's going to give me, now I have my screen share and the video on top, and then I can only see the background in areas where there's nothing else in front of it. All right, let's see, let me grab one thing here really quick. All right, excellent. So one other thing that I don't love about this so far is that it looks kind of weird with the, this is just a little bit busy in terms of a background. Obviously, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we'd like to make it look nice. So I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to click the plus and go to color source. And then I'm going to call it, I'll just call it black. Okay. And then we will make our color. Click select color over here and just make it black. Hit OK. All right. So now I've got, I can't see anything, but that's okay. We'll get there. I will click OK. And then I'm going to either right click and click filters here, or I can come up here and click filters. Either way works. Hit the plus sign. And then I'm going to add a color correction filter. And this could do a number of different things. Basically, you know, it's going to tweak your colors a little bit. But in this case, I'm filtering this like black shape that I've got here. And I'm just going to change the opacity, slide it down a little bit, and make that a little less. Let's just go for 90 even. That's good. All right. I'll click close. And now I'm seeing everything, but it's a little dim. I want to take my webcam and move it up. Take my window capture, move it up too. There we go. So now I can see the background, but it's not quite as busy looking, and that's nice. And there's some other ways you could do it. Of course, you could do that to the image beforehand, different things like that. But this is a really nice way to make that happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about let's make another scene here. This time, I like what I've got so far, so I'm kind of just going to keep it, but I'm going to adjust it a little bit and make it and make it work for, well, I'm going to make it work for a game this time. So I'm going to come over here. This time I'm just going to right click on the name of my scene and I'm going to click duplicate. We call it screen share 2 and I'll call it instead game stream. Okay, cool. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and unplug a cable. So we'll see what happens here. Here we go. And there we go. All right, excellent. That's working. So we are, so this time we've got our setup here. And we're going to try this actually a couple of different ways. So let's see. One thing that we're going to do is one thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to well, so there are a couple of different ways that we could stream a game, as I mentioned kind of toward the beginning of class. One of those ways, of course, is just to do it from the computer itself. And a lot of times that's a very nice, convenient way to do it, particularly when you're starting out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this window capture where it is, but I'm going to unlock it. And I'm going to make my game capture approximately the same size. So let me go ahead and fire up a game. Hopefully it'll work. I probably should have launched it before we started, but c'est la vie. There we go. Nice. All right. All right, there we go. So now the game is running. And in order to screen share the game, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on down here, click the plus sign, and I'm going to head to, there are a couple of different ways to do this, or actually, I guess there are 3 different ways to do this depending on your situation. So if you're running a game, but if you're playing a game, but you're not playing it full screen, if you're playing it in a windowed mode, then you can use window capture, just like we did here. Unfortunately, that's not going to work most of the time. I mean, most games at least default to full screen, and I at least prefer to play them that way for the most part. And so you're going to have to rely on one of these other 2 options. Display capture is would be hard to demonstrate for you, unfortunately, because I can only fit so many monitors on my desk. But basically, if you are in a, if you have multiple monitors connected to your computer, then you can choose display capture, and whatever's showing up on that other screen, on whichever screen you choose, will appear there. That's basically what I'm doing inside of Zoom on this computer right now. Is sort of is using its equivalent to this display capture option. And that's why you could see my desktop when I had everything minimized and all of that stuff. So that's one way to do it. But of course, you have the whole thing of, if you use this computer for literally anything other than playing games on stream, or just playing games in general, then you might end up getting some notifications from some of your other programs, or getting seeing an email from work or whatever. And so that may not be the best. So that may not be the best way to go, generally speaking. Instead, you probably want to come down here most of the time and hit game capture. I'm going to click on that. And again, I get create new or add existing. I'm going to call this Hollow Knight, because that is indeed the game. I'll click OK. Now we have capture any full screen application, capture specific window, or capture foreground window with hotkey. So there's a bunch of different stuff going on here. Unfortunately, you can run into problems with this, particularly if you're on a laptop. Laptops, gaming laptops in particular, have multiple GPUs, graphics processing units, similar to a graphics card that you would install in a desktop computer. So a lot of them have a lot of them have a graphics setup inside of the processor. That's just, if you had just a plain old business computer, basically, all the graphics that are happening on screen are directly created by the processor and sent to your monitor. But for games, because they use so much more graphical power, they usually rely on a separate graphics processing unit that communicates with the processor, but the graphics processing unit is doing pretty much all the work of drawing the images on this that you're actually seeing on screen. Gaming laptops have both of those things. So, if you have a gaming desktop with a nice graphics card in it, that nice graphics card is going to be running 100% of the time and creating all the graphics that you see on your monitor. But for a laptop, it switches between the two, depending on whether you're doing something graphically intensive or just checking your email or, working in Excel or something. And so that's what we're running into right now. There's a possibility we might be able to still grab it, though. Let's see. If you find something like this happening, there's an updated version of OBS that actually has a beta version of that allows you to capture games across different GPUs. That's pretty cool. Don't think this is working. Let's go specific window. Oh, there we go. Hey, what do you know? That worked. Sometimes you can change this mode and that, you just play around with it if it's not working quite the way you would expect it to. There we go. Okay, lovely. All right, I can turn that off. Oh, that's looking good. Good. Excellent. All right, so now I'm going to click OK. And now we have our game inside our stream there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and, let's see. Okay, good. Next thing I'm going to do is just get this resized a little bit. So I'm going to come over here, click on the little dot and scale it down, and we'll just make it match this nicely. Excellent. All right, and we can go ahead now and get rid of this window capture. So I'm just going to click on it, press the minus. Are you sure you want to remove? Yes, I do. Thank you. And the game is seeing my mouse movements, apparently. So from here, I could get things started for the most part. But there's still a little more setup to do here because I've got my I've got my video set up, but I need to do some audio as well. So I'm going to come over and take a look at my audio settings here. So I've got desktop audio 2. Messed around with these settings a little bit. Q2U, so that is this microphone, but it's actually plugged into the other computer over there. So that's not going to do anything. In fact, I can go ahead and hit hide and get rid of that. And then the webcam down here. So let's go ahead and make it and make the webcam microphone sort of explicitly a source over here. I'm going to click on the plus and we'll go audio input capture. All right, so again, I can create new or add existing. I'm going to call this webcam audio. Okay. Then I have default microphone array or microphone 2 live gamer mini. So that's the capture card that's the switch is plugged into right now. So that's not the one we want. I'll click OK. Now, if you choose default, what's going to happen is it's going to is whatever the default microphone in Windows or Mac OS or Linux or whatever is, whatever that default microphone is, that's going to be the microphone that will so you see webcam audio down here. If I had set that as the default, then whatever the default microphone is in Windows, that's what it's going to be capturing, regardless of whether I actually want that. So usually with these audio sources, it's better to, particularly if your setup doesn't change that often. My laptop, unfortunately, I tend to move between my office here, here at home and in the classroom up at the main library. So I tend to have to tweak these settings a lot from place to place. But if your setup is more static, or if you're really only going to be streaming in one configuration, then you can set these up, point them to specific devices and leave it there. If you notice a device is not working, it might be because you unplugged it and plugged it into a different port than what you had it plugged into before. OBS cares about that. And so, so you may have to go in and redo it, like change that setting. Okay, so let's take a look at this a little more closely. So what we've got here is we have our levels. So your levels are set up in decibels, and they go from, I'm going to say that's 60, although it's hard to tell, all the way up to, or negative 60, I should say, all the way up to 0 decibels. I know that sounds a little weird, but basically when you're dealing with audio levels like this, one of the main things that you want to focus on is, or one of the main things that you want to avoid is kind of overloading your mic or the audio systems that you are working with too loud of audio, essentially. If you do, if you do sort of overload it, then what's going to happen is you're going to get an unpleasant sort of noise, through the microphone. Honestly, this microphone is doing some weird things, so you might be hearing that now. I hope you're not, but you might well be. And so, when louder sounds happen, it'll kind of make this sort of crackling noise. And that crackling noise is just really, really hard to get rid of. The software can't handle it. As far as it's concerned, you're making that crackling noise with your mouth, and so it's not gonna. There's not any really good way to filter that out. It's unfortunate, but it is a thing. So you want to make sure you'll need to, you may need to check some settings depending on your microphone. I've got the instruction booklet for this microphone right here, and I looked at it to try and figure out how to make it sound, pretty decent. But yeah, there's a really good chance you'll have to play around with it a little bit to get it to work right. Assuming that the audio that's coming into your microphone is fine, you will also have, you should be able to see these levels on your audio device there. This right here. And those levels are going to be basically they're going to indicate, they're going to show you when you're talking, and they're going to show you if you hit this 0, then you have peaked. Even if the sound coming in from your microphone is fine, if it's too loud compared to what you are to what OBS is needing or expecting, then you're still going to get that crackling noise on the on the stream ultimately. So so you may need to crank it down a little bit. In this case, with the webcam, it looks like I am. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and crank it down a little bit. Not a ton, but if you tend to get excited and loud a little bit, you may want to crank it down a few decibels. So that way you leave yourself plenty of margin, even if you do shout or whatever, then it's not going to make your audio bad. So I've cranked that down a little bit. That's probably good. I'm mostly sticking to the yellow here, which is pretty good. That'll mean that when I'm hitting primarily in the yellow on my higher peaks, that means I can get a little bit louder without causing problems. And it also means my audience is going to be able to hear me, because obviously there's a balancing act here. If I crank this too far up, then my audio is going to sound bad. If I crank it too far down, then the audience isn't going to be able to hear me. And so there's a little bit of tension there that you're definitely going to need to think about. Okay. And, it's trial and error a lot of times. One of the things about this, one of the things that's nice about streaming in general is most people are doing it from home, and they're not necessarily expecting everything to be absolutely perfect. You might have to, I don't know, to just think of an example that has never happened before, go and put the dogs away when they start barking. And so that's perfectly fine. And, it's good to be able to experiment. Not every stream is going to be perfect. And so you'll want to, and so if it's not perfect, don't beat yourself up about it. That's normal. And you're going to be okay. Just, try again, and gradually you'll get better at it. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to actually change one little setting in my Zoom, because otherwise that's unfortunate. Anywho, so let's see. All right, so we've got this. We can kind of we can play around with this. We can add some additional things here. So you've got you could add an image slideshow that will rotate occasionally, or where you can kind of do a little PowerPoint presentation on there. You can add a browser where you can actually pull in like web content directly rather than through a web browser window. That's a little weird, but you can do it. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do there. One is, one cool thing that we can do. Let me show you with, I'm going to just create a blank scene here. Click OK. Okay, so here's my blank scene, and I'm going to add a media source here. I'll click OK. Whoops. Video file. Okay. I'm going to click browse, and I downloaded a stock video of people talking in a cafe, and we'll have it loop and use hardware decoding when available. So this is basically telling the computer, I've got a graphics card in this computer, please use it. I'll click OK. And there's the stock video. So now I can let that run in the background. It's going to loop, and I can add other stuff on top of it if I want to, or whatever. So if I wanted to switch from playing a game to some sort of video, say, for example, a lot of times folks will have it. If you're streaming for a longer period of time, you might have to take a little break or something. You can, and a lot of folks will switch to a screen with some music, and it'll show a little animation of some sort. To do that, you can just get the, create the video that you're going to use for that, and then set it up in a scene like this. And then when you click here, you'll just switch to that, and then you can walk away. And of course, you can also change a lot of your settings in this scene. So in this particular scene, I might have everything muted except for the video file, because presumably it also has the music attached to it. Or I can have a separate source that would be my iTunes, or my whatever media player I might happen to use to play some music. Now, of course, there's a whole thing with rights and stuff like that. Be really cautious when you are using music that you didn't make yourself, or that you didn't buy the rights to from a music library of some sort, because otherwise you could end up with a problem, and you do not want that to happen. Okay, cool. So switching back over here, let's go ahead and play around with, well, let's see. Let's go ahead and make a couple more tweaks to our audio, and then we'll talk about going live itself. So let's see. One of the things that we're going to do here, so I've got my, let's check these settings here. So I've got this desktop audio. I'm going to click on properties here, and I'm going to see, okay, so default, yeah, that's good. Okay. Desktop audio 2, also the default. So this is fine. So we don't really need this one. I'm going to click on the little gear here and click hide. So we can just get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so I've got that set up. One of the problems here when I am, for folks on the other end of the stream would be because I'm running Zoom on this other computer to screen share it with you. It's also getting my audio secondhand from Zoom. Oh, that's a thought. Okay, I think I know how to make that stop. There we go. Nice. Wait, maybe that's the wrong one. Okay, let's see. Yeah. All right, that's working. Um, Yeah, okay, I think that is working. This does not need to be muted. There we go. Okay, cool. So I've got that set. Now we should be getting, well, that's interesting. Well, no use fiddling with it too awfully much. Let's actually just switch over to the switch and do that. So I'm going to hit the plus sign here, and I'm going to go down to video capture device again. This time, I'm going to call this one LGM Live Gamer Mini, and I'll click OK. So again, for anybody who missed it at the beginning, I'm using this capture card here, the AverMedia Live Gamer Mini. My Nintendo Switch is plugged in there, and so I can capture video from gameplay there. I'm going to go ahead and close Hollow Knight because otherwise we're going to hear lots of music that we don't need right now. Okay, cool. So I've got the Live Gamer Mini selected. Actually, with that particular device, though, they have this separate thing called the Stream Engine that they want you to use if you are live streaming. It gives me this weird error message, but whatever. And then once that's all done, okay, I think we can probably leave everything pretty much default. I'll click OK. All right, now we have our view from for the Switch. So let's see. We need to drag this again, and oh, I lost the. Oh well. All right, there we go. That's a good size for that. And basically, well, that's really all I need to do to capture that. So let me talk you through what's happening in the device here. So this particular, or this little mini USB cable is plugged into the back here, and it runs out and plugs into the laptop that's running OBS. Obviously, there's a driver installed and all that stuff. This cable is the Switch HDMI cable. So it's running from my Switch dock over here directly in here. By the way, if you have a Switch Lite, can't do this, unfortunately, because the Switch Lite doesn't do HDMI output. Only the regular old Switch does the HDMI output. And it has to be plugged into the dock. So this is running out of the Switch dock into the capture card here. Then this red HDMI cable runs out of the capture card and runs into the monitor that's in front of me, which is showing me the game full screen. And the audio is also going at the same time, because obviously if you just plug the HDMI cable into your TV, then you'll be able to see and hear the Switch. And so so the audio and the video are passing through the capture card. The nice thing about that is it's a with this particular device and any device that's made for gaming, it's the pass-through is going to be direct. So essentially what the capture card is doing is it's taking the HDMI signal and it's duplicating it and processing it into a video feed that the computer can understand and basically treat as though it were a webcam that's plugged into your computer. So just so for your computer, for most intents and purposes at least, the capture card is a webcam, but instead of having a lens and a microphone and all that, it's capturing HDMI video and audio and running it and duplicating it directly into your computer. But any of these devices, at least the ones that are made for gaming, you shouldn't have any you shouldn't have any real perceptible latency, there should be no lag between, your input and what you see on screen, beyond, what the game and your TV introduce. So here we go. Let's test it out. Yep, seems to be working nicely. And I am getting an audio signal from there. I was worried about it originally, but it's just that it's this particular game is silent when it's paused. I'll actually just let the music run a little bit so we can see that that's happening. Okay, so we're getting a decent amount here. It shouldn't really go all the way up to this 0, but if it's getting close, you might feel a little nervous about it, so you might crank it down a little bit. One of the key things about doing a stream like this, where you're watching something or you're playing a game or whatever, is that people do want to hear what's going on, but they also want to hear you. So you need to have a good balance of the two in audio. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. So one nice thing you can do, I'll show you how this works in a minute. It's super duper easy. One nice thing you can do to test this out is to just play a little bit, not on stream, and record it in OBS, because that will give you an idea of whether your levels are working. And you want to record some where you're not talking and you're just playing. And you also want to record some where you are talking at various volume levels, maybe even, so that you can make sure that the game audio is not going to overwhelm your voice, and that your voice is not going to completely swamp the game audio either. Obviously, if you're saying something, it's more important that they hear what you're saying than that they hear the precise audio that's happening out of the game. But it's important to be able to continue to hear the game in some capacity. So I'll just leave that there. We probably won't get top marks for this run on the level here. Okay, so we've got our music going from the game. We've got our audio that's coming in from the webcam microphone. And one nice thing that we can do to kind of get these levels right. So yeah, let's see. Maybe we want to just bring this down a smidge so that, so that it's about in the middle. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty good. And we might crank the mic up just a tiny bit, so that we're maybe just hitting the red, because we do want to, again, be slightly louder than the game. But one thing that can help with that is I'm going to click here on this little gear, and I'm going to click advanced audio, or excuse me, I'm going to click filters. Now this is on the Live Gamer Mini on the game audio that's coming in. I'm going to click filters, and I have a few different things. I can add a video filter here, or I can add video filters as well. So like down here, I could add, I can crop the video, or I can, if it's giving me, if the shape is wrong, I can change the aspect ratio. If the colors are weird, I can do some color correction or whatever. But the big thing, I'm going to click the plus up here, and I'm going to go to my, and I'm going to go to the compressor. I'll just leave it. I'm actually going to call this ducking. All right, there we go. So I've added this compressor audio filter. I named it ducking. You can add multiple filters of the same type. Whichever ones you put on top are the ones that go first, and then the ones on bottom proceed after that. That can be kind of important, because depending on what order you put the filters in can make a big difference in terms of the quality of the sound, particularly with sound, but also, of course, if you've got one effect that's, well, one thing you could do, we won't get into this because I don't have the green screen set up and with me today, but one thing that you can do is you can use a green screen behind you. You want to make sure you light it well. But if you do that, you can click the plus sign here. You can add a chroma key filter to your video. What that's going to do is just make sure that you, or what that's going to do is allow you to pick, okay, my green screen is this color of green in the video, and then it will try and filter all that out so it just shows you. It's hard to get that right, and you want your green screen to be very smooth. If you do that, it's just a little tip. And you do want some backlighting kind of behind you. So so whether it's an overhead light or something else, essentially light between you and the green screen so that you don't get a shadow on the green screen or too much of one. And also it makes it easier for the software to tell where your hair and your body begins and where the green screen ends in the video feed. So we've got our audio filter here. I can change a whole bunch of stuff. The ratio here is basically how high the audio will be or low the audio will be in comparison to what it normally is. But the big thing that I want to show you is this sidechain / ducking source. When I click that drop-down box, I can come down here and I can choose webcam audio, and I'll click close. And now what's going to happen is when I start talking, OBS is actually going to crank down the game audio pretty smoothly, a little bit, and that is going to allow my voice to come out strongly and not be too confusing when I'm speaking and the game is going at the same time. But it's also going to mean that when I'm not talking, folks will be able to hear the game clearly, and it won't seem weird that I'm not talking. Like it won't seem like it's really quiet and then suddenly this booming voice comes on or whatever. Let's see. There we go. So now let's talk about how we can go live. So we've got 3 buttons here: start streaming, start recording, and start virtual camera. And you can use those for 3 very different useful purposes. When I click start streaming, what's going to happen is it will, whatever settings I have set up, which we'll talk about in a moment, it will start sending video content to the appropriate URL and using the stream key that I gave it the last time I gave it one. If I click start recording, then it's going to start recording whatever's happening here. You can do both at the same time if you want to. It's going to use slightly more power on your computer to both stream and record at the same time. But depending on your situation, you might want or need to use one, the other, or both. And then the third option that you have is start virtual camera. And what that's going to do is OBS will create on your computer a little virtual webcam device. And so if you go into another program that accepts input from a camera, like Zoom, for instance, then you can actually use OBS to feed video content into Zoom or whatever the case may be. If I click start virtual camera, and then I go into the Windows camera app, then it will fail to load. And I won't be able to show you what I'm talking about. That's annoying. Let's try one more time. Nope, it's not going to do it. Anyway, you get the idea. Whenever you're going in and selecting a camera to use in some sort of in some sort of video conferencing or whatever, you know, something else that can record video content, then you can use OBS as your camera source, and that way you can add little special effects to your video feed or whatever. The one problem that I've had in using that is there is some latency there, and so if you don't use OBS as your microphone in that in Zoom or whatever as well, then your audio will be out of sync. If you do use your OBS as your microphone and your camera, then just all of you will be on a delay. So it's not great for sort of video conferencing type situations, to be honest with you. You can also switch to studio mode here. Studio mode basically allows you to plan a transition to a different scene without doing it right then. So you can even make tweaks to the scene in the background without your audience seeing. So right now we've got the game stream scene. If I want to transition over to the video, I'll click on that. And then it's going to show me a preview. Looks like it might take a sec to load or something. It should show me, yeah, there we go. Okay. So it's showing me a preview of probably because it's waiting on me to start it when I'm ready, rather than starting it before the audience can see. But here it is. It's going to show me a preview of whatever the scene is that I might be planning to switch to. And then when I'm ready to switch, I just hit transition, and then it switches over to the next scene, and it allows me to queue up another scene or make changes to it or whatever over here. So that's pretty cool, because that way you can do all that stuff in the background without your audience watching windows fly around in their video. You can also change what transitions you're using. So right now, the transition that I have is swipe, and the duration, how long it's going to take to swipe over, is 1,000 milliseconds, aka 1 second. So I can change how long it's going to go for. I can also click this to change which transition I want to use. There are some built-in ones, and I'm pretty sure you can get like plugins and stuff to do more. You can also have things like a fade to black if you need to, and so on and so forth. Once you do this, your audience just seeing black screen, but if you wanted to get them back to the scene that you were on, you would need to queue it up and transition from it. Okay, so let's talk about how to start going live. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to regular old mode. So what I'm going to do is I need to find out my stream key and URL in order to stream to most services. Now, it kind of depends on the service, and it kind of depends on how you're using it. This is what I'm going to show you is kind of the manual way to do it. OBS has options where you can log into different types of accounts. And in some cases, it'll actually give you more options, like you can interact with the chat inside your OBS window and things like that, just depending on what the situation is. But a lot of the time, but it's pretty important to know kind of the standard way to do it. And then if you are able to log into your account or whatever, great. So this is kind of the standard way. I'm going to go over here to Firefox, and I'm going to come to the background here, or to the back end here. This is the class. This is what folks are seeing if they're watching on YouTube, or this shows what folks are seeing if they're watching on YouTube right now. If I click over here on this tab that says Stream Settings, what it's going to do is it's going to show me you can create various stream keys inside of YouTube. Basically allow you to set different settings for different types of programs or different devices that you're using to stream, that sort of thing. So you can select that using a drop-down box here. But the main things I want to draw your attention to are the stream key right here. So this has these little dots to obscure it because it's pretty important, kind of like a password. Super duper long and random though. So usually you're not going to be typing it anyway. You'll usually just hit copy right here and it'll copy it to the clipboard. And then you have the stream URL, and this is just an address. Usually it'll start with RTMP. RTMP, I don't know, I think it stands for like real-time messaging protocol or something like that. But basically when you're sending things that are supposed to be live, you're usually using the RTMP protocol. So this is kind of the back end in YouTube's like live studio situation here. To get here in YouTube, by the way, what you'll want to do is head to your head to YouTube Studio, which is kind of the overall back end. And over here on the side, you'll find kind of a wavy, where is it? Oh, let's just go back. You'll see something like this. You can click on that and get into this. This one shows you the scheduled events, so you can schedule events in advance, and then that way folks know if they're subscribed to your channel, like, oh yeah, they're going to do a stream on at such and such a time or whatever, or you can just start streaming. I'll click back here. That's going to take me to the live studio. It'll give you little warnings if you need Zoom. It's not always great at putting out a wonderful video bit rate, so that's a little frustrating. But it'll give you these little warnings if you're having a problem. So over here we've got our stream settings. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to head back over to OBS. Okay, in OBS, I'm going to come down here to settings. Pops up with all these different settings, and I'm going to go to stream. And what I'm going to do is paste the stream key right here. So I can right click and paste, or I can use Control V on a Windows computer or Command V on a Mac. And then I'll look here. That's actually the same. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. But if that wasn't filled in for whatever reason, I could do this, paste it here. If I'm connecting directly to, if I wanted to connect my account to a particular streaming service, I can select it from the options here. And that'll also actually give you some help in optimizing your stream for those particular services, because there are some limitations that various services have, just depending on whatever. The biggest one, the most annoying one, in my opinion, is Facebook. The maximum resolution, in other words, the maximum amount of pixels you can be streaming to them, is 720p, so a little lower quality than your average TV and so forth. Okay, I'm going to click OK. And then when I'm ready to go live, I can click Start Streaming. Now, in this case, because I'm showing you the back end of this with this class, and the stream is already going, I'm not going to start it. But of course, when I click it, the Start Streaming button just becomes Stop Streaming. Almost everything else stays the same. You'll see a few little health indicators down here showing you if showing you how your well, kind of like it does now, showing you how the CPU is doing. In other words, how hard's your computer working, and that sort of thing, and showing you a little green, yellow, or red, just depending on how well things are going tech-wise. These little counters will also show you how long you've been live and how long you've been recording. And then you should also see the bit rate. So the bit rates that they're talking about, that's basically just how much information are you sending to the streaming service. So generally speaking, as YouTube so helpfully reminded me earlier, about 2500 is usually a pretty good, decent bit rate. Some services accept much higher ones. I think the highest bit rate for Twitch right now is 6,000 kilobits per second, kbps. And so just whatever platform you're streaming to, just make sure you know what those settings are. Speaking of which, if I click on settings here, I probably, once I know that information, I'll probably want to look over here and tweak some of this, particularly here in this output video in the streaming section up here at the top. So the video bit rate, this is the amount of information that OBS is going to try to put out for me. Now, if my hardware gets a little overwhelmed, it might not work. I might not get that bit rate out. And depending on just what's on screen, it could be a lower bit rate anyway. But once I've got, then I've got this encoder drop-down box right here. Because I have an NVIDIA graphics card in this computer, I have this option, hardware NVENC. But you may have other options just depending on what hardware you have and so forth. The hardware options here are going to be superior to the software ones because they're not going to drag your computer down as much. It'll be relying on hardware that's designed to process video information rather than just your computer's processor. And that's really good. The audio bit rate, basically, the higher you crank this up, the higher quality your audio is going to be, up to whatever point the streaming service you're using will no longer allow it. And you can change your recording settings here. So you can change the format it's recording in. We're not going to talk about codecs or anything today, but you can do a little research on that if you need to, if you're having problems with your recordings. And then over here, you can tweak your audio settings a little bit. There are various things you can do with this. They're a little too much to get into today. And then finally over here, video. If I click on that, you'll see I've got, I have some kind of key settings here. So our base or canvas resolution, this is how much, or this is essentially how many pixels are here. Now, technically it's going to be less than this because this is a 1080p screen that you're seeing right now. But basically the assumption is that this is going to be the size of your, that this is going to be the size of this area right here, or the size that it's considered to be. And then output scaled resolution. So this is the resolution, the level of detail that you're actually putting out to the streaming service. So that's 720p right here. If you want to change that, you just type in the resolution that you want, and it'll at least try to do it. But sticking with kind of common ones is the best way to go. 1080p and 720p are right here, and 4K if you're fancy, or 1440p is kind of a more common one these days as well. And you can just, if you Google, if you're not sure what that is, believe me, I have to do it sometimes as well. You can just Google 1440p and see what's going on. You want to find out what the resolution of your screen is, like, what can your monitor display? Because if you're putting out a stream if your monitor is 1080p and you're trying to put out a 4K stream, it's not going to look very good because you're trying to stream information that's not on your screen in the first place. So so find out things like the resolution of your monitor and those sorts of things. And obviously, if you have this cranked up nice and high, then things are going to look really good, assuming that your hardware is capable of it. If you put them down a little bit, then things might not look quite as nice, but keeping a good frame rate where things are not jerking around is going to be more important than having the absolute prettiest stream, but it only runs at 2 frames per second. or, your computer melts or whatever. So set these. You may need to fiddle with these a little bit to get to see what gives your audience a good experience, and kind of balances out that it's a balancing act between do you want, should your video should be smooth, but maybe it in order to be smoother, you should turn the settings down a little bit. You can also change your FPS here. FPS stands for frames per second, also known as the frame rate. And the frame rate is just whenever you watch a video, your eye gets the illusion of movement based on a bunch of still images flashing on the screen in rapid succession. So a movie runs at a frame rate of 24 frames per second, unless it's one of those weird high frame rate ones like those Hobbit movies or Billy Lynn's long halftime walk, things like that. Other than that, normally a movie runs at 24 frames per second. Standard TV frame rate is 30 frames per second. So you have 30 still images flashing on the screen in sequence in a given second. And then standard frame rate for games these days is 60 frames per second because you need it to be a little smoother so you can track motion a little bit more easily. Most of the time, most people are going to probably be streaming at 30 frames per second more often than not. Most cameras that you get are also only going to be capable of 30 frame per second video. So, if you've got a 60 FPS camera and you've got a computer that can run the game that you're playing at 60 FPS, or you're playing on your console or whatever, great. But if one of those items doesn't run at 60, I would probably just put it down to 30. And those settings will be saved from session to session. So if you exit OBS and you come back in, then it'll save those, and you can use the same stream key and stuff to go live, assuming the service that you're using allows that. That is probably about it. What questions do y'all have for me before we wrap it up? If you have questions, throw them in the chat, put them in the comments, send them my way in Zoom, whatever. So I'll give it just a moment or two for questions. All right, I'm not seeing anything. Totally fine. If you do have questions after the fact, then let me know. You could shoot me an email. digital@cals.org is a good address to use. And thank you so much for joining me today. I hope y'all have a fantastic weekend. And I hopefully will see you at another class again soon or on stream.